Change of Plans podcast. This is episode 8. I'm Joe Aguirre, along with Vin Provenzano. Vin, how you been?
Yo, I'm living, Joe. Hi, wakey, Joe. How's your morning going, my friend? Let's just tell people how your day is started on this fine Saturday morning.
I got this new gig, as you know, where I get up at 4:30 in the morning. And it's like I have to worry every night about one of my kids coming by, grabbing my phone, and me not hearing my alarm go off. And it's happened a few times where I've woken up at 1 or 1:30 in the morning. Thank goodness I pass out around 8. So I've already gotten some sleep at that point. I get up, and I've been able to locate my phone, usually in another room, sometimes dead. This is, you want to laugh, you don't even know this part of the story yet, because I had this happen. My son did it, and he's usually not the culprit. I go, did the alarm go off? He goes, yeah, but it went off at 8. I go, why do you think it was set for 8? He goes, I don't know. Now, mind you, it's like 9:40 when we're having this conversation. So in his mind, the alarm went off at 8. What did you need that for? That's the time I was going to get up. I was going to get up at 8. Instead, he handed me my phone at like 9:40. And I had a text from you. We doing this?
You know what, Joey? This is how much I like you, because I'm not OCD about anything in my life other than my sneakers being clean and fucking time. Like, I am a complete psychopath about time. So I'm sitting here doing like a motherfucker because, like, last night it's like, hey, maybe we'll do it in person, yada yada. So I'm sitting at the house and I'm like, all right, I woke up early. I walked my fucking dogs in the woods because I'm like, you know what? My wife's got to work. I want them to be rested. Maybe I'm going to go to Joe's house today. It's like 8:30. I'm like, not hearing from Joe. Let me just get to the office to be safe. It's 9:25, 9:27, 9:30. I'm slamming my iPad everywhere. I'm texting you and I'm like, it's not like, oh, maybe something bad happened to Joe. I'm just more irate than anything. But then I took a deep breath, got a cup of Joe, and you're magically on the screen. And then you told me your story, and it's hilarious. And like, my alarms on my phone, by the way, like if you looked at like the alarm setting, I probably have like 75 alarms, and it's like 3:21 in the morning, 3:23 in the morning, 3:25. And I just hit them like back to back to back, and say, instead of using snooze like a normal human being, it's like fireworks going off in the fucking morning. And my wife,
I would imagine there's some crossover too on the ones you don't snooze into actual multiple alarms going off at once. You get up at 3:20 in the morning?
Depends. So I used to be a crazy person, and it was every day because I go to the gym in the morning. I know I don't look like I go to the gym, but I do like to hang out in the parking lot and watch TikTok, and technically I'm there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so twice a week, it's usually like a 3:30 because I go to Bristol. Then I got to drive back to Cromwell to get my dog, then go to Southington. So it's kind of fucking stupid, but I do it because I go hang out with my buddy Rob. And then the other days I get to sleep in until 4:15, and then I go to the gym. So yeah.
So you get up before me every day, is I think what you just told me. And I actually have a job I have to be at around 5.
Well, I used to be. So the idea was, it used to make more sense because I just go in the office for like 6:30, but now that like I get my dog and I'm a grown up, and I really just living life, Joe. So I get to the office at like 7:15, which is late for me. Maybe 7:30, 7:45 if I'm feeling fucking crazy. And then my associate strolls in at fucking 9:01. Just living that balanced, Gen Z life that everyone loves to live, and get after it. But listen, we're here. We got it going. You survived. We both got our cups of coffee. If they're listening and not watching, we're drinking coffee, just to let you know. I got, I think, like 4 shots of espresso in mine, though. Just letting you know, it's gonna be a game changer today.
With the lack of time I had, this is a coffee cup, but there's actually just some water in it because that was all I had time for. The only Joe is
Nice.
outside the cup.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So how was the week, Joe? Recap of the week. How was your week?
Well, it was insane. My week was insane. I became the afternoon guy on Radio 104 in Hartford.
Fucking prime time, dude. Prime time.
And it happened very suddenly. I was given like an hour's notice. And then shortly thereafter, my boss complained that it wasn't over the top enough.
Oh, cheers.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you're I'm not gonna say anything about your boss because I want you to have a job,
Yeah.
but I might have to show up at the office one day and just have a chat about my buddy Joe. And I mean, listen, if you want an over the top afternoon show, you may want to call me. I'm more than happy to jump in his seat for a couple
Right.
hours and see how many fines you get. I might set a record.
That could be something. That could definitely
Mm.
be something.
Tell him you got a secret weapon, right? And I'll come in and do what I do, and maybe we'll take over, and I can quit my job and not have to deal with dumb arguments all week, like arguments all week about dumb shit. That was the theme of this week, was just like, my job as an attorney. Like, parents are wild, right? Like, they're the most absurd fucking people in the world. Like, never mind the kids. Like, I expect kids to be idiots. But like, I'm literally in court on a Monday. I think both parents had 4 days of vacation all year, which is crazy, right? Like, in my line of work as a divorce attorney, 2 non-consecutive weeks, be normal human beings. The kids are teenagers, get some passports, take these kids out. Dude, I'm sitting there in court. It starts at 2 o'clock. I'm telling this attorney, nice guy, but he should have retired 4 decades ago. And I'm like, listen, my kids' season openers today. I can't fucking miss it. I haven't missed a game. I haven't been late to a fucking game. Like, it's not happening. And we're arguing over fucking 2 weeks of vacation time. And this bag of donuts was like, I'm just going to let you know, sir, I'm going to be really mean to your client on the stand. And then anyone knows me and my practice, I'm a complete crazy person. So I looked at him and I'm like, well, whatever your mean is, multiply by a fucking 1,000, like 1,000%, and tell your weird client with his weird eyebrows to stop looking at me, because now, like, I'm infuriated. So we have this hearing
Oh my
over
God.
2 weeks of vacation. Like, that's the type of shit I went to law school for. And I'm looking at these parents like, the guy's like, well, I'm worried about them going out of the country, given the state of the world. And I'm like, are they going to Russia or Haiti or like some ISIS country? Like, they just want to go to the Bahamas, bro. And then, like, so I'm late to my kid's game because this dad can't get out of his own fucking way. And I'm like looking around, and that's when, like, I go back home and like I got it so good, right? Like, my wife and her ex-husband, they get along very well. Like, everyone's on the same fucking page. The kid's happy. And then I go to work and it's just parents fighting over, and some of the fights are legitimate, but like, it's unreal, man. It's unreal. And then you go home and it's, people are just like, you can't believe you're dead. I'm like, I spend 8 hours a day dealing with dumb shit all day. And I wish I could just tell parents, like, listen, don't be shocked that you guys don't agree on shit. Like, you guys got divorced, right? Or you guys aren't together. So it's expected that, like, hey, you're not going to agree. Shocker. But what's in the best interest of the kid? It's not that difficult, right? Like, if it's going to make the kid happy and not harm the kid, then you do it. Like, it's just infuriates me, bro. They're like, could you believe he did this? And I'm like, or she did this. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you guys aren't together anymore. Like, but if you have kids, it's not like, hey, we just got to get through 18 years. That is a life sentence. So figure it the fuck out and stop paying me $400 an hour to deal with your dumb shit. I mean, I don't mind doing it, believe me, but it infuriates me because it's really not that hard. So that was my week in a nutshell, but I think that's pretty much my everyday life. Is just dealing
It
with
sounds
that.
like it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just and then you get these attorneys that I think. So what I always tell people is, like, I anticipate the emotional roller coaster of my client, right? Because I have a client that you talk to him and like, 0 words come out of his mouth. Like, I I make fun. I'm like, dude, are you there? Are you okay? Like, but it's the attorneys that are maniacs. Like they're so emotionally invested in their cases, and I'm like, listen, they don't pay us to be emotional, right? Like you're not going to yell at me. We're not getting a divorce. We have to solve the problem. Like you're just creating these problems. So it's just the idea of the billable hours and these attorneys that are like racking up 30,000, 40,000 on a divorce case is insane to me. And they're just feeding off their clients' energy. Like there's not a divorce in this world I can't get done for like maybe 10 grand max, maybe on a fucking good day. But it's just full circus all day fucking long.
I could only. I mean, listen. I obviously had a divorce myself, and we ended up going to court a few times. I remember one time she got a Wednesday dinner every month, one random Wednesday night dinner.
Hold on, Joe. My kiddos FaceTime me, so let's put them on blast in here. Hold on, and then we'll go back to your story. But let's see what this kid's looking like this morning here. He's not gonna like this all that much. But let me see if I could figure out how to.
Oh, kids love this kind of stuff.
Let me see. Can you guys see that? Is he gonna pick up?
There he is. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Jess.
He loves it. He was like a starring role. I love this.
What do you want? Can I have some? Look at what a fucking kid drinking my cold brew, bro, and he's asking for what.
And he asked if he could have it. My kids just grabbed my phone in the middle of the night. That's a good kid right there.
Listen, one more year, ladies, and he's on the market from 18 on up. All right,
you can have all that cold brew. Finish it.
Let's go. All right, have some cold brew and strike out some people today. Good luck, kid.
Mow them down. That's a nice
sorry
thing.
About that.
No, I love that.
What a fucking kid, right? Like just a fucking dude. Just a dude. We had I'll go into
my kids would have stolen that cold brew and not ever even admitted to it.
Dude, it's wild, bro. Like that was me as a kid. It's just everything was community. Like there was no that's yours. It's just in general, it's a community. Like they have food in the fridge in the office. Like if that shit doesn't have a padlock on it and it smells good, we all get something. I think that's how it should be. You know?
I like that.
But listen, sorry for interrupting your story time. So go back to it. I had to show off the kid a little bit.
So she like took me to court to get a Wednesday night dinner.
Yep.
And then 2 months later, after they gave it to her, we went back to court so she could rescind it because she hadn't taken it. And I had suggested, since she took me to court for the Wednesday, if she didn't take it, I was going to follow up with the court. It was like she wanted to get a day just to get a day.
Wait, it's the paper victory these parents want.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, and then on the flip side, like if you were my client, I'd be like, listen, you could pay me to go back to court, or she's just not going to take the Wednesday, right? Like you can't make a parent be a better parent, right? So, I mean, I had a case this week where the dad had the option of an additional like 3 days a week, like picking up the kids after school, daycare. Shit's been in place since like 2017. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, I want a shared parenting plan. I'm like, bro, you haven't gotten any extra time on your own accord for 7 years, right? And it's really because you wanted to lessen child support. But it's just crazy to me that like the parents can't have these conversations or give the parent the opportunity. And then if they fall on their face, then they fall on their face, right? Like, you know, I get the balance of you want to set the kids' expectations because you don't want the kid waiting by the fucking window and the parent not showing up. Right. But the onus always falls usually on one parent unless you have a good co-parenting situation. And that's what I try to tell my clients. I'm like, listen, you're going to have to give your kid the coping skills necessary to deal with the other parent sometimes if you don't have that co-parent relationship. But it's I get so frustrated in my practice because 90% of the problems I deal with in family law are fixable and fairly easy. Right. If the parents put their own egos aside and say, hey, it ain't about the win or I'm the better parent. it's about the kid, right? Like that's it at the end of the day. It's, and I get it. It's tough when, especially when you had a married couple and then they get a divorce and you have that emotional aspect of it. And it does take some time, I think. But it's not about the win. Like your win is your kid being good. Like that's the W, right? Like that's the ultimate like goal. Like I was talking with my stepson last night, and he's a very introspective kid. Like he's just a fabulous human being. And so we're at the fire pit and we were talking, and we were kind of talking about this conversation, and he acknowledged himself like how lucky he is, like that his parents get along well, right? Like that he has two really good households, and like no kid ever wants their parents divorced, but that divorce brought other people into his life, right? And he has a stepsister, stepmom, stepdad, but like the key of it was like my wife and his father did an excellent job of keeping all of the other shit on the side, and the focus was the kid, right? And that's and for to see a child recognize that like is phenomenal, and that should be your goal as a parent, that your kid when they're 17, 18, or adults be like, you know what, like it was cool because like there was never that anger, that hostility that was around me, right? Like, and for a kid to recognize that, like, it's phenomenal. And as attorneys, especially family attorneys, I think that should be our goal, to put our clients in that position to be that way, right? To get our client out of their own way. um and I'm not just banging on other clients or other attorneys, because I have those clients as well. Like I don't get to pick who I'm representing half the time, and I had a conversation with a client this week about, he has some good dude, has some alcohol issues, like some problems, and it's, well, how many therapy sessions do I have to do before I get to here? And my advice is like, dude, it's not about the sessions, it's about getting better. So in the long haul, like you're gonna be able to be a father, right? Like if you do what I tell you to do, you're gonna get there. But it's not about winning the battles, it's about, finishing the war. And it's those conversations that I don't think a lot of attorneys have. And I think that's what flipped me kind of into the coaching practice, is because my practice kind of blends into that, where yeah, like I want to get you divorced, and yes, I have to pay bills and make money and all of those things, but I find that I tend to advise my clients on things that are about the bigger picture. And I think in my profession, it's you know a lot of attorneys don't do that, even though we have the opportunity to do so. And it's one of those professions that there's not a lot of professions like mine, like as far as being a lawyer, where it's not just a job, right? You have the ability to really impact and direct where someone is going.
Hmm.
Um, and it's, I get it. Like in a perfect world, we had unlimited time and unlimited resources, and we all could do that. But sometimes it's just that simple conversation. But so it was a super frustrating week, because it's, depending who I'm dealing with on the other side, it really makes it difficult, from a family law aspect, anyways. Because if that attorney's not on the same page as you, or doesn't practice in a similar manner, um, it becomes difficult. And I think that's kind of where I'm at in my practice, where I figured out what lane I'm in. I used to try to be like every other attorney, right? Like, well, this person does it this way, this person does it. They're very organized. They do this, that, and a third. I had an attorney this week, great guy, and he's very particular. He's been doing it forever. He's got the fucking binder, the tabs, like OCD. This guy mows his lawn 3 days a week. Like he is up at 3:30 in the morning, blasting emails. And I remember my first case with him, like I knew what he was doing, so I would respond at like 3:45 in the morning and kind of
Nice.
short circuit him. And we are 180 from each other. Like you couldn't find two more different people, but we get along. We work so well together because we respect the way each other practices, right? So he's got his binder, I got my iPad, like, and we were like, we riff off each other, and it's hilarious because he's such a good dude. And a lot of times you're like, oh, he's difficult to work with. He's not. Like, you just got to understand the way he practices and it works for him. um so I think that's, I think being confident in what you're doing and in your practice, um is my biggest strength at this point after practicing for 18 years, like, and doing this podcast. And I was listening to, Deion Sanders came out with a book. And I can listen to that guy talk forever. Like, he's just like that guy. Like, right, he's just, I just want to hang out with the dude and just listen to him talk all day. But he had one quote that I was listening to. I was walking my dogs, and it says, "Don't allow my confidence to offend your insecurity." Right? Like, so,
I like
you
that.
know, that, like, that's, I think that's a great quote, right? Because people will knock you, right? Like, when you are confident, right? They'll say you're arrogant. It's not arrogance, it's confidence, right? It's okay that you work to get to a point, like, when you're working to get to that next level where you wanted to be at, everyone supports you, right? Like, everyone's like, got your back, you're doing good, keep up the good work. But when you get to that point where you're like confident in what you're doing, those same people start fucking hating,
Yeah.
right? They're like, those people are that push you to get to the top rung of the ladder, all of a sudden are like pulling you back down. And I think, for me, like, it took me a good 18 years to get to the point where, like, listen, I'm unapologetically me, and I'm good with that. So if it offends you, that's it. But I think if it if every person in their profession and in their personal life did that, I think we would all be better, right? Like, it's not, so when I'm my whole point was is working with the other attorneys not like me, but we both embrace what we do, and then we're not offended by it. And I mean, that's what, Joe, we've talked about. That's one of the things I love about you. Like, there, you are unapologetically you. Like, and it's a great thing, and it's not an arrogance thing. It's just, you embrace you, and you've got to a point where it's just like, I did all this work already, so I'm good with me. And I think, more people, have to be like that, because if it's not, you don't have to be arrogant, but if you have that confidence, that means you put in that work to get that confidence. And then you're so much happier because you can be present, right? You're not reaching for something else. You're not striving for something else. You're like, dude, like, I'm good with being me. Yes, I want to make improvements, but I'm not going to walk out of the house worrying about, well, if this person likes me or if this person approves me. And if you don't like me, that's fine. We don't have to like everybody. We've said that a million times. But and if it offends you, if I offend you, then, and it's not something I said. It's just me as a person offends you,
Mhm.
my confidence or whatever you perceive it to be. Then it is what it is, man. And
That
I
that
heard the
actually.
quote, and it's just like, go ahead.
So, what's your quote?
Well, no, I was just gonna repeat the quote. Like, it's, and they had one other one he had said. It was, what was it? It was about, um basically, like my time is money, right? Like, your time is money. Everyone's time is money,
Yep.
right? And if my critics aren't paying for my time, then I'm not paying for attention, right? Like, if you're
Oh
not paying
yeah.
me for my attention, then I'm not going to give you my attention, right? So critics could go be the critics. You could say whatever they want about me, but my time is worth more than, you're not going to pay me for my time, so I'm not going to pay you any attention, right?
I
Like,
love
so
that.
it just goes back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's like, if you could get in that lane and figure out, how to get to that lane, I think it helps you on a day-to-day basis.
I had a screaming argument with one of the guys I work with. Sales guy came in to
Hmm.
lay out a proposal for something he wanted me to endorse. And we had just been having a conversation about not being upset with people with different views than you. And this guy sort of welcomed himself into the conversation as one of those people. Like, I don't get upset about stuff. And then we started talking about the Constitution. And oh boy, it didn't take long for this thing to go off the rails. Just a little teaser for the story. He believes his rights are God given from the up above. And I explained
Yes.
that the verbiage that they used at the time when they wrote the Constitution in 1789 people at the time only understood your rights to come from the monarch. And the alternative to a monarch that we were separating from would be God or some sort of divine something or other. There was no other place where your rights could have been granted from. This guy and I, because he didn't like that answer, told me I was wrong. I told him he should read a history book. We went back and forth until I screamed for him to get the fuck out of my studio. And he stormed out and slammed the door. Now, about 2 hours later, a quick text exchange where I said, I think you're making a big, we also posted something on Facebook about it. And I said, I think you're making a much bigger deal about this than needs to be. And he said, because apparently in the argument, I told him, and I stand by this, that I know 20 times more about all of this stuff than he ever will. Because I study it all the time. I study this stuff to talk about this stuff. That's part of my job. And I'll tell you, Vin, if there's one thing that can really prompt a response from me, tell me I don't know what I'm doing when I know what I'm doing. And I will turn into like the Incredible Hulk. I will lose my shit.
We got to work on that, Joe. We really gotta.
When I don't have control, I tend to. I think I've just noticed this recently, but yeah.
No, I got that. I think it's been a constant theme on this show.
Oh, yeah.
Like sometimes it's good just to sit back and be like, okay, dude, that's good. I'm glad you believe you're right. Like, have a good day. You don't have to turn into the incredible, because here's what happens, Joe, right? Like that, there's never been a situation where you turn green, your clothes ripped off, and you're in your purple shorts.
Yeah.
And then that person on the other side is just like, bro, you're right. Like it never happens. Like,
yeah.
Like ever in life. Like, and then all of a sudden, like, you got to eat Tums. You're fucking just sweating through your shirt because you're like, haha, I got that guy. Like sometimes, like me, I'm a passive aggressive dude, right? Like that's something I've been working on, like to purposely be like passive aggressive, because I used to be like Joe, like my vein pops out of my head and listen, I need to win the argument. But now, like, I think the better approach, I already know I'm right, but I'm just gonna be super passive aggressive to the point where they know that I'm being passive aggressive. And they get even more infuriated because you're just sitting there calm, cool, and collected. It's a game, right? Like there's nothing.
Suddenly I love this.
Because there's nothing better than having like a heated argument, but the only person heated in the room is the other person. Right? Like, because then it's a game with yourself, right? Like now you're testing your own skills because you're just sitting here, just casually having a conversation while someone's imploding on the inside, because it goes back to that confidence thing. Joe's a very confident guy. Like, and your confidence doesn't come from arrogance, it comes from knowledge, because you do your homework, you do what you need to do to be prepared in these conversations, right? You can't control that the other jabroni didn't. But what you can control is how you're reacting to the jabroni, because that person's going to realize through the conversation, when you're having a very calm intellectual conversation, that he is a jabroni and he's just going to get more infuriated by his jabroniness, which I don't even know if it's a word, but we're going to use it today. Jabroni.
It's a word, and if you met this guy, you would see it. If the word was defined in the dictionary, his photo would be used as an example. Listen, I've had other conversations with this guy, and I know him to be wrong about a great many things. He's one of those people, then, who has decided that there are facts and there are his opinions. And his opinions are as credible as any fact from any doctor, scientist, lawyer, politician, whatever.
But Joe, you know that going into the conversation. So my point is, like, you already know it, right?
I did.
Like, we had this conversation a couple of podcasts ago where like some poor guy on a fucking T-ball team is trying to have a conversation, and you overhear him, and you're like, no, I'm Mr. Facts. Like I am, if I'm a superhero, Like I am super fact man, right? Like that wham, fact hammer. That's what I'm gonna get you. That's what I'm gonna get you. You can walk around your office. It's a fact hammer, right? Wham, whammo.
I would love that.
So but like you already know going into the conversation, like this guy is just spewing nonsense. So it's either you go in the conversation, know it's gonna be full of nonsense and laugh, or just don't have the conversation. I thought you were going into he bought the Trump Bible, by the way, which is just insane. Have you seen that fucking thing for $59.99?
I have, and this guy, I would bet, has one.
Oh, he has 7 of them, bro. He has one for every room. Like Trump said, you got to have one for every room because I've read the Bible many, 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 many times.
The guy I'm talking about is a huge Trump supporter, by the way. And listen, I'm not a Trump guy, and I've told him, I said, look, I understand why you like the guy. I get it. He's not for me, but I get why somebody would dig him. So I've already granted him sort of that. And again, he's fast and loose with the facts. And I don't know, Vin, if it was a Friday, if it was because it was a week filled with all sorts of other, whatever the case may be. When he started talking about God, I was like, all right, I'm sorry. We got to put an end to this. This is too much now.
But it's, it's funny too. Like I always find, and we're not going to have another God conversation on this podcast, but I also heard something this week and it really rang with me. It's the people who are always that, like, it's my God-given right and God this and God that. 90% of them are the most ungodly people in the fucking world.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious, right? Like, it's like, God this, God that, let me judge you, right? Mm-hmm. Like, God this, God that, I'm going to go slap my wife. God this, God that, don't worry about it. I went Sunday, he forgave me all my sins, and I'm hitting the fucking reset button. Which
that must be so nice.
It's so nice, right? Like, that's, but but that, and that's what's so funny about the Trump Bible, right? Like, if all the people in the world that should be like not selling a Bible, it's probably the guy with like 58 indictments, right? Like it's, and I do criminal work, right? Like, so if my client's got fucking 12 cases pending, am I going to vote him for president? Probably not.
No.
Am I going to say like, okay, maybe get arrested once, a wrongful arrest? Maybe like 4% of the time. I think I've had like one innocent client in my life, and she was like alleged to steal sunglasses from a sunglass hut, and it clearly wasn't her. And I've been doing this 18 years, and I don't care if you did or didn't do it. I tell my clients, I don't care. Like, I don't care. You're not hiring me to prove you're innocent. You're just hiring me so I can show the state can't prove their case and get you a better fucking deal. I'm not here to judge people. But, like, you got some dude hawking a Bible with the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance all into one fucking book. And let me separate church from state. Like it's hilarious. And then you'll see the people walking around with the fucking Bible and shoes on, bro. And that's when I'm going to lose it. And I'm not a political guy, but that's when I'm going to take my car and drive onto a fucking sidewalk.
I'm pretty sure that book also talks about not showing off your wealth, but what do I know? What do I know?
Let's get off, let's get off this track a little bit. But yeah, so that was kind of my like week in a nutshell. And that quote, I think it really hit home for me. And, my question for you is, you've been doing what you do for a dog's age. So, like, would you remember if there was a point in your career when you were like, or in your life when you were, I'm in my lane, right? Like, there was that, like, I don't have to worry. I'm not worried about impressing people or what people think of me. I'm just going to let Joe fly and, be good with that. Like, you remember if there was like a turning point, or you kind of always been like that?
Yeah. When I first got into the business, I mean, I was very accommodating. If my bosses told me to do something, I did it because that's what you were supposed to do.
Yep.
And then an opportunity came up, and I was working on the morning show, and they didn't want to pay me. And that's when I realized that it's not about just doing your job and doing it well, that you also have to be able to stand up for yourself. And at the time, all I could do was leverage by getting a job offer elsewhere. And they didn't match it. I ended up leaving. I ended up returning to that exact same radio station 3 years later for a very large sum of money.
Yep.
And while I was away, went and worked in Portland, Maine, a very small market where they do things kind of the old way, you know, very, and it's upper, upper New England,
Yeah.
so it's a little more respectful of your elders and stuff like that. And I worked with a
Yep.
guy who was an idiot, and it looked like I was going to end up doing a lot of work for that guy. And that's when I really realized, yeah, I'm just gonna have to, I'm gonna have to speak my mind on this stuff. And
Yep.
that's where it started. It started circa 2001, 2002, and it got results. You don't get walked on when you speak up on your own behalf. That's what I noticed,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, is that the trick to all this? You just got to
Yeah.
speak your
So
mind."
yeah. So like I think, and I think yours is one, obviously speaking your mind, but two, having the knowledge to speak your mind, right? Because you're prepared, right? Like it's you got to find what I tell people is you got to find what's your biggest return on investment, right? So one of the things that I heard over the past couple weeks when you're talking about a return on investment as a person, it's like a basketball to LeBron James, that's worth $1 billion, right? A
Yeah.
piano to Alicia Keys, that's worth millions of dollars. But if you gave Alicia Keys the basketball, it's worth shit, right? Like so, I think me and you are very aligned in our strengths. Our tool is our personalities and our voice box, our voices, right? Like
Yep.
that's our tool, that's our basketball. And that's not everybody's, right? Some people are very technical, some people are brief writers, some people are code writers, right? Some people are just worker bees. But I think, when you realize like, listen, I gotta speak my mind, I gotta use my voice and my opinion, that's when your career took off because that's your tool, right? That was your biggest return on investment.
Yeah.
And that's that. I think me and you are very similar in that aspect. Is that like that's our biggest tool and like leaning into that. And I think people need to figure out what works for them and what's the biggest tool in their toolbox, right? Like, I mean, we're all different, and that difference is what brings value. But you got to figure out what is it about you that is gonna give you your biggest return on investment on yourself.
Look, I think if you're smart, that's what you are. You got to look in your toolbox, like you said. Make sure you're not the biggest tool in that toolbox, and then figure out which of these tools am I best equipped with, and which of these tools can I. And I'll tell you too. I think you seem like a genuinely very happy person, both in your
Yeah.
personal life now and with your profession. And I think people who are happy at work are generally happier people, because people who don't like to work, or even worse, people who do a job that they hate, possibly utilizing one of the tools in the toolbox that isn't their strong suit, that's setting yourself up, I would think, for failure, disappointment, and misery.
Yeah, and I think where I'm at with my career, I mean, I want to say I love being a lawyer. Um, but and I just had this conversation with my wife. My job affords me the opportunities to follow passions that I do have,
Yep.
right? Because I think you get caught up in this. Well, you got to find the job that you love to do, and until you find that job, it's pointless. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, you don't want to hate your job either, but if your job allows you to pursue your passions, right? Like I think that's also an achievement in itself and something to be grateful for. So do I necessarily like if I had to go pick my ideal job, it wouldn't be what I'm doing as a lawyer, but there's not many jobs that would afford me the opportunities, the time, the money, the people I meet to pursue the avenues I'm truly passionate about. So I think that's kind of the quandary I'm in right now, but I absolutely don't hate my job. There'll be days and I have moments, and it might be moments throughout the day where I'm just irate about what I do for work. And if you went and took a survey of my staff, they will all tell you they're all dying to hop on this podcast, by the way, because it's a reality show in here. But I think it's if it if I have to keep the mind frame and remind myself, well, this allows me to do that,
Yep.
right? You, on the other hand, you're like the jolly green giant. Like you love what you do. You're passionate about it, and you have to because your other avenues of business are all kind of aligned in the same field,
Yeah.
right? And that passion comes through. Like I mean, and from everyone that I've talked to who's listened to the podcast and watch it comes through immensely, and that's everyone's goal. Is everyone wish they could have that perfect. I love what I'm doing. I'm getting paid for my passion, and not that's a rare thing that I know you appreciate. And it wasn't done by dumb luck either. I hate that shit. Like people are like, oh, you're lucky you have that job. It's not fucking luck, right? Like you get up and work for it, right? You plan for it, and if you're doing something that it's not getting you there, then you adjust to it, right? It's not luck. There's no, it doesn't fall into your lap. Like every decision you've made puts you into that point to be in a position to maybe accept a lucky moment or something like that. But those are little decisions made, and then and for you're it's not luck, it's the hard work, but it's something that we all strive to, is be in a position where we're doing what we're passionate about and also being able to sustain a life and support a family. Because yeah, I would love to go fucking raise puppies and have a dog rescue and live on a fucking island with dogs and just
Yeah.
coach people all day. Yeah, cool. And then I'll go live in a shelter. Like that's like I can't I love my wife, and she's like, well, just get a job at PetSmart. And my wife is great. Like that's awesome until like baseball bills come in or like someone wants to go do something. So
Yeah.
there you gotta have that. You got to have a work-life balance, but you also got to realize your work is also is really gonna help out with that balance.
Well, it's funny. We were talking in last week's episode, and I thought last week's episode was really good. But one of the things we talked about was sort of right along those lines of, are the moves that you're making putting you in the position where, I mean, again, when I got into radio in 1997, every move that I made was with an eye on, I got to cut everything else out. No more work in retail. Too
You
easy.
were working. You were working in 1997.
Yeah.
Jesus, dude, I didn't even graduate high school yet.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out. My
I
bad. Go ahead.
forgot. I forgot. I forgot there's those couple of years that you get to lord over me, which is good for you. Enjoy that now. But yeah, 1997, as I was going to broadcasting school, I had a retail job, and after a year, and I'll tell you, the people at the retail place, because they knew what I was working towards, and eventually started hearing me do stuff on the radio, it was like, then they were like, if you got to leave or you need to come in late or you need whatever you need to do, let us know. And it was like, oh, good. I could still go into this joint pretty much at my leisure, get
Yeah.
35 or 40 hours. They were paying me pretty decent back for 1997. And so I wasn't 2 feet in on the radio thing. So after having these amazingly accommodating people, after a year and a half, I was like, listen, I have to quit here now. You guys are too good to me. And if I
Yeah.
don't cut the safety net and give this a shot without a fallback gig, I'm never going to make it. And against all odds, that's what I did. I cut the cord, and it was like sink or swim, dude. And
Yeah.
I was down to single digits in my bank account when things finally popped, but I never missed a
Yeah.
meal, so that was good.
Well, and you figure it out, right? Like
Mhm.
that's how when I went out on my own in my practice, my boss had passed away. It's my ex mother-in-law always been great to me. She let me like I needed $120 to open an LLC. Like we had just gotten married, like just got a condo. Um, but it was that I remember I went on a job interview, kind of similar to your situation. It was at a big firm. And it was really through a buddy of mine that was doing me a favor. I had like no place going to this big firm, and the guy's like, "Listen, like I would love to hire you, but you can't work for somebody else." He's like, "I know you've been practicing for 3 years, but he's like, this shit ain't for you. You need to go do you.
No kidding.
And then and then that's what I did. And it was the same thing. Like you grind it out, but you're able to find like your passion in it, right? And like back then I didn't have anything, and it's not that I enjoyed being a lawyer more, but I like the hustle of it, right? Like I like that, like, dude, I'm in my fucking car. I gotta go figure shit out. I gotta pay bills this week. How am I gonna do it? Um, I'm extremely grateful now because I have a great staff. Like my main paralegal Natasha's been with me 3 years. Bella's been with me. No, Natasha 11 years. Bella 3 years. Taylor's been around 2, 3 years. And we're just a family. But I can remember those days where you're just like, how's this gonna work? But the alternative is what, right? Like you said, like it's either you're gonna work the retail or go into radio. I was working at like Hellsberg Diamonds coming out of college. I was a marketing major, doing the DJ, rapping stuff. But I made 90 grand in 6 months at a jewelry store in a mall. Like I could fucking sell ice to an Eskimo. Like it was
Nice.
fucking ridiculous, dude. Like people are like, "Why are you quitting?" And I literally just walked in one day. I'm like, "I'm fucking done." Like, and I'd never seen that kind of money, bro. I was living off my Discover card I got in college when they gave you like a $50,000 limit to like an 18-year-old, and you
Love
didn't realize
those.
you had to
Yeah.
pay it back. I was like, boom, 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 boom. But I think it's just leaning into what you're doing, and that's what you try to tell people now. But also, especially in my coaching aspect, it's not like, hey, give up everything else and just jump in 2 feet in your passion. Like that's foolish too, unless you're in a position to do that where you got money in the bank and you don't have a family to support it. But it's carving out that like 20 minutes a week of doing like passion project or 10 minutes a day, or it doesn't have to be a lot. Like those little steps could change the trajectory of your life immensely. And you never know what step that's going to be, but it's the little shit. Like it's just a little turn to the right, a little turn to the left,
Yep.
and then you continue to make those turns until you figure out where your lane is. And people are looking for that big event, right? Like the life changing moment. Like there's never a life changing moment. It's a culmination of things that got you to that moment, but it's never the one thing. And I think for you, like being in that retail aspect and people saying, you know what, hey, maybe, what, we're flexible over here. We really see what you're passionate about. If people didn't do that, then maybe you want to be here today doing what you're doing. Right. Like
True.
if you didn't see
Yeah.
that initial support of like, hey, you had these people that you only knew from working at the store pushing you, then who knows? So that little conversation maybe you had with a store manager, like if you think back, like how greatly it affected your life is crazy. Like, cause you don't think about it like that. Like, oh, I was just having a conversation with fucking Joe, the manager. And then all of a sudden you're like fucking 25 years later, you're on
Yeah.
an afternoon show at 1041 because some dude at the Gap or American Eagle was like, hey, bro, stop stealing clothes and you could come in whatever and go do radio.
Yeah. And I did steal a lot when I was there, but that's, statute of limitations. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure has sailed on
listen,
that.
I'm pretty sure I owe the Gap a whole bunch of fucking money, but I'm good. We're squared up now.
Someday when I really make it big, I'm going to send a check over to those guys just to make up for everything, so I feel like we're even. But yeah, look, I here's the ultimate irony, right? You've been to my house. I have a pretty nice house in
Yeah,
Weathersfield, and directly diagonal to where I live is one of the assistant managers from that store that I worked at the time.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
And I
awesome.
remember the day we came here to look at the house. The second time we came here, we'd seen it once, put a job offer in, huge snowstorm happened. It shut down the same. I think it was 2011. There was a big snowstorm. Yeah, 2011. And we came over to the house to make sure, because we were getting ready to close on it, to make sure there was no damage or anything bad had happened. And all of a sudden, this woman and her kids came over from across the street to talk to my wife and kids. And I look in I already got into the car. I look in the side view and I'm like, no way, dude. It was oddly enough, the only manager there. She was the only female manager and the only one that really gave me a hard time and still expected me, especially when I first started getting on the radio. By that point,
Yeah.
it was like I could do whatever. And the men, they didn't care. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
Joe's crazy, right? She was the only one. She held me accountable. She made me do
Yeah.
work. And I do. I mean, I really do appreciate her. We wouldn't be neighbors if it wasn't for her, and I think she
Yeah.
regrets that now.
Yeah, but I think also too, like you needed someone to do that, right? Like
Mhm.
because if it just, I mean, it's nice to be showered with love, right? But being young in your career and all of a sudden you're on the radio and you're getting a taste of it, like sometimes you need that person to fucking hone it in a little bit and be like, and at the time you're probably like, yo, this chick's a bitch. Like, doesn't she know who I am? Because that's how I would have been. Like, I would have been like, I wasn't even on the radio and I just walk into a place like
Yeah.
I'm that guy. Like I walk into a restaurant and I get so infuriated when I'm not acknowledged immediately, like I'm Justin fucking Bieber or something. My wife like is like, what is going on in your head right now? But like if you take a step back and it's just like, oh, you know what? I needed that at that time.
Yeah.
Well, I need to know what store it was, by the way. Now I'm curious. I need to know what store it was. Where were you working?
Why do you need to know?
Because you haven't mentioned it. I just find it curious that you
Yeah.
haven't
I've
name
gone out
dropped
of
it.
my way not
So
to mention it because
I know. I
yeah.
know. Was it like an X Factor in Bristol, like some weird like pleasure store? Like what was it? Like I need to know now.
It was a
I need to
big
know.
retailer. Just I'll put it to you like that. Just a well-known retail store.
No, like Joe, like I'm not letting you off the
You're gonna
hook.
press
Like
me on it?
that's
All right. All right. In
what is it, dude?
1997, I worked at
Yes.
Walmart in Wallingford. And I'll give
Dude,
you
what
one
is it?
better. Oh, I'm not proud of that. I was in I'll tell you.
Wait, like, are you kidding me, dude?
Let me tell you another funny story because I think I had told you I had gotten thrown out of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bad kid. And again, and there was I'll tell you, when people talk about white privilege, I think about the mid to late 90s. And I think about all the bad things that I did. And I think about all of the administrators and deans and principals over those years who were like, you're a good kid. You just messed up. And it's like, I'm a bad kid and I mess up all the time on
All the
purpose.
time.
And everyone's
Yeah.
throwing me a pass because I'm a white dude.
Yep.
In 1995, I could see that being a white dude, pretty all right in this country. Whatever
Pretty
I
awesome.
did, whatever I broke, whatever I stole, whatever I did, somebody was
It was
ready.
a mess up. Hey.
Everybody was ready to give this nice kid, because I was funny too. Everybody knew I was hilarious.
Yeah.
Even in the moment,
chance.
you could be laying out the charges and I would crack a joke and have everybody laughing about it. It's like, you're going to really bust me. But that Walmart was a humbling situation for me. I showed up, you know Wallingford. It's a nice place. I showed up at a job interview. The Walmart hadn't been built yet. They were actually looking for a 10-man crew to build it. And at the time, as luck would have it, Pratt & Whitney had done a bunch of layoffs. So they hired 9 men in their 50s, engineers laid off from Pratt & Whitney to build the store, literally to lay the concrete, the tracks in the back and everything. I showed up to this job interview in a suit. I was the only suit of the 150 people sitting in this lobby, the only guy in a suit. And would you believe that same female manager I just told you about came walking out and it's not like I showed up first. Yeah. Maybe you're like alphabetical order. I don't think they were doing it like that. But she saw me in a suit. She pulled me out of the crowd. She said, I got to come talk to you. We had a great conversation. Great conversation. She told me about this thing working with 9 engineers. She didn't point out I would be the only non-engineer guy, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. I had no idea what she was talking about. And that work, by the way, was
Yeah.
well beyond my capabilities, which was interesting too, Vin. Because for 15 days, I worked with these 9 engineers from Pratt & Whitney. They made me learn how to lay concrete. And they were like, if the tracks are messed up, you're going to have to jackhammer it and relay it. And I was like, not any one of you wants to do that. It was more important to them that they teach this 24-year-old dude how to do this on his own. Like, if we need to get it done, we'll get it done in a day.
Yeah.
But we're going to make you do it. And I learned a lot from them. And again, I got to credit my neighbor, because why she picked me for that crew, I will, to this day, I never understand. But that's another thing. I mean, if you're going to go to a job interview, look professional. Correct, I got plucked out of the crowd. Now, the craziest part was, before I could get this job, she was like, there's a drug test. We got to send you to go take a drug test. And I was like, you want me to take that today? Or she was like, yeah, right now they're waiting for you. Oh,
hey.
They're right down at the clinic. I just go right to and they already got my name. They know I'm coming. Yeah, you're one of the 10 guys. We got to get you guys hired immediately. I was like, well, Liz, it was great to meet you. Let me go I'll go take that, and you let me know how it goes. And yeah, I went and took that drug test. And they called me the next day. And they said, hey, congratulations, you passed. And I was like, what? I don't think that's... Oh, good. Yeah, awesome. It's great to be aboard. Great to be aboard.
But it's those little moments that, like, you reflect back on, right? Like, you don't get a chance to do it often. You're like, you know what? Like, that was a game changer for me, right? Like, yeah, 1, sweat. Remember, you might have to take a drug test. 2, like, be presentable no matter what job you're applying for. And then, like, 3, like, appreciate the time you have with those, like those 9 50-year-olds from Pratt, right? Yeah. Like, that's a different generation where like my generation is not doing that with someone underneath them. I need, I have, people who work for me, and sometimes I need to take a step back and be like, listen, they don't know what I know. So instead of hauling ass throughout the day, sometimes I need to take a step back and be like, listen, like, walk them through it and take that time. That generation was very much about that, right? It wasn't about, yes, they need to get the job done, but they're like, hey, we want to teach you life skills. And I think part of the problem now is, everyone has all this technology and stuff. They're like, hey, just go figure it out. But sometimes you need to take the time out, to show these people things. But, to your point, it's fun to kind of reminisce on, like, those little things in life that, like, hey, working at Walmart, or like I spent 8 years working at the West Farmers Mall, like in every fucking store. Like,
really?
Oh, dude.
Nice.
I was 8 years at the Gap, but then I'd be at other stores just to get free clothes and be back at the Gap, or I'd be at a jewelry store. But like, through those like 8 years, me just learning to deal with a constant flux of fucking people. Like, in the Gap, I worked in the dressing room for fucking 8 years. I was a dressing room guy, like, which was a dope job for a bunch of reasons. But like, but like, I learned, I crafted my gift to gab, right? Like me doing my DJ stuff or my rapping stuff, like that all it formed me, and with the ability to do what I do now as a lawyer or as a coach or doing a podcast, like all of these things, like, kind of formed into it. And I think sometimes, like, I know I need to take a step back and kind of, like, you know what, like, live in that game, as we talked in one of those episodes, and not the fucking Gap.
Yeah.
I'm constantly have to remind myself, don't worry about tomorrow, just live in today. And then just reminisce about the past. So, but yeah, man, like, that's
real quick. Thank you for pressing me on mentioning the Walmart, because I always leave out that part of the story, because it's like not a cool part of the story in my opinion. But you know what? As I listened to last week's episode, and it's like, pursue your dreams and go for it. And like, yeah. And anyone watching who's miserable is like, go fuck yourself. This is the caveat I should have explained to you.
Yeah.
I went through and did a lot of miserable stuff on my way. Some of those steps I talked about last week were not pleasant and fun for me, but I
Yep.
did it anyway, knowing ultimately what my payoff would be if I showed up every day, if I worked hard, and I was the best me I knew I could be. If I were to take the influences around me, the best of what I'm hearing from these other people, put it all into just me, I'll be as good as everybody else or better. And the shocking thing about that, and this is going to sound like I'm bragging, but within 3 years of being in radio, I was better than about 95% of the people. And I could see that immediately. And I was like, oh, wow, I could really
Yeah.
go places, but I got to stay focused. And that was the key. Sometimes I was broke, but I was pursuing exactly what I wanted to do. And listen, you mentioned earlier, I think, borrowing a couple bucks from your mom. I've
Yeah.
done it. I've done it plenty of times. It's important to have people in your life who love and support you. Not who are going to
Correct.
throw money at stupid ideas,
Yeah.
but when you finally present, hey, look, I want to start a business, or hey, I really think I should go to broadcasting school and pursue this, that you got someone that's like willing to make the investment in you because they see you're
Correct.
invested in yourself.
Like a 1,000%. And it's funny when you like it took you three, like you realize, hey, I'm better than 95% of the people, and that's why I didn't take a job with another law firm. I'm like, I could do what they fucking do, and I
Yeah,
could do it better. I might not be able to do it better right this second,
I
but
will.
I'm going to, because I'm gonna put in the prep to get there. And I think that's where people get lost. People think it's just like, okay, I want to do this and I should be the best now. No, it is fucking the steps, the grind. It's okay to be broke. Like, it's okay to make mistakes. Don't ever feel sorry for yourself because you made a mistake, because you learn from that mistake and you take a step forward. And at the end of the day, I think, me and you ended up okay, right? Like, I think, people like us a little bit, and like people benefit from the grind you put in, right? Because if you didn't put in that grind, you didn't realize that, like, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this. And hopefully people say the same thing about me. But it's that grind in those stories. That's why I press you on the Walmart, because people want to hear that shit. Like, dude,
Yeah.
I worked at fucking Taco Bell. I worked at Ingram Manor. I got fired from 8 jobs in 1 year, like fucking 8, dude. I went all the way down Route 6 in Bristol, fucking
Oh,
every job.
let's do an episode where we talk about jobs, that embarrassing jobs that we got
Oh,
terminated
fucking,
from, because I've
yeah,
got a
we got a few. Yes, I think that's gonna be a
yeah,
good one, dude.
that could be a long
There's gonna be a
episode.
lot of apology letters going out for me after that
Right?
episode.
That check to Walmart has just been extended out to JC Penney as well.
That is great, my man. But
Two
yeah, so
good
I
summers
think,
with those guys.
yeah, like, listen, at the end of the day, I think, if people get anything from us is that, just be confident in who you are, like, just unapologetically you, and just embrace that. So that's kind of where I'm at, Joe.
I love it. Well, that'll do it for episode number 8. Make sure you check out changeofplanct.com. That is the website. I got to tell you, I feel like since we started doing this podcast, I've become a little more philosophical about stuff. And just in my
Yeah.
approach and my look at things, and I'm not actually a patient of Vince as much as you might think I am. I can see where people might think that. Like, these are therapy sessions that we're having. He's just that good at getting people to open up. I kid you not. I've avoided saying Walmart so many times in telling my story over the air. You
Dude,
know
I
what I
think it's
mean?
like,
Even right
I
up.
think it's the best part. I was expecting like some like a weird pervert store or something, like, but like it all, like, I love telling them, I like, hey dude, like, I remember when I used to fucking fuck with people's food at Taco Bell because it's hilarious, right? Like, but it's all of that stuff makes us. But listen, I'm glad you shared, man, because you don't have to. And frankly, like, I think doing
Says
the
that now.
podcast, like, it makes me kind of stay on track with what, like, I'm doing, because I fall off the rails all the time. I'm not some like fucking guru, like, Come talk to me at 3 o'clock. I might be sucker punching a fucking person in a back alley because I'm so mad, and then I got to tone it back in. But I think it's through these conversations, like you learn from me, I learn from you, and hopefully everyone listening, takes away from both of us. And if not, go fuck yourself. And stop listening to my podcast. No, I'm just
Words
just
to
kidding.
live by. Let that carry you through the week until we reach episode number 9. For Vin Provenzano, I'm Joe McGuire. We'll catch
Adios.
next week's episode of Change of Plans podcast.